Victory Monday for at least one of us on here, and I gotta tell you, Kalen, I'm feeling really good because this is actually the first winning streak of the Steelers season. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. So this is now 2 in a row. Weirdly enough, gets them back in the playoff chase. We'll get into all of that. First and foremost, how's your weekend going? You look like somebody that needs a good cuddle. I don't think that AJ Brown meant any of his hate towards you, and you should be aware of that.
Well, we'll talk. We will definitely circle back to that game. But no, it was a good weekend. Lots of dad stuff that I had to do, but there was some good football that I was able to recap, at least watching replays and stuff like that. So that was nice.
Yeah, and you know what? This was definitely not the weekend to have dad stuff going on. This was the kind of weekend that you wanted to be free. There was lots of college football, and we will dig into a little bit of college information later on. We were hoping Chad was going to come on and join us for it, but he's a little bit tied up with end of the year, and he's getting ready to go to Costa Rica. I'm sure he'll call in from Costa Rica. Yeah, right.
In the rainforest, yeah.
You know what? This is the kind of show that rips the Band-Aid right off. So let's rip the Band-Aid. Let's rip the Band-Aid right off and say, how was the AJ Brown revenge game? How you feeling right now? And how do you feel about that story that I posted of Philly fans getting up in the Titans booth, the owner booth, and giving them the finger?
So, okay. There's just a whole lot of loaded questions you gave me there, Shane. Is the floor mine? Is that what you basically said?
Yeah, that's a download. That's a download right there.
Okay, so we are like, what, 7 months, 8 months away from when the trade went down. We got the Titans that have announced that they're going to have a new stadium. Treylon Burks, when he has played, including in this game, has been very, very good. He's still a rookie wide receiver, got a lot to learn, of course. But that's what was upsetting for me in that game, is that the guy got a touchdown, a beautiful catch, an illegal hit for sure, defenseless receiver there. I'm sure that guy's going to get a fine here this week. But, I really wanted, even if we lost, okay, I wanted Treylon to have, a 100-yard game or close to a 100-yard game, and a touchdown or two would have been pretty fucking sweet. And you know what? I think that the way that our offense is running, it was kind of through Treylon in the last few weeks. Like, I think that's the way that it would have gone down. But it was also the way that, like, when we were talking about our picks coming to the weekend, I saw you put Henry 2 touchdowns. I had picked, and I deleted and put down as one, was AJ Brown having 2 touchdowns. I thought the whole point of this game was going to be them force-feeding it. Coming into, like, last week, they had 49 rush attempts for 350 yards. And this week, coming into the second half, they had like 10 or 4 going into the second half. There was a purpose here. It wasn't just to air it out to all the receivers. It was, we're going to throw it as much as possible because we want to make sure that, out of that 70% of the time, we can try and get the ball to AJ. And they did. They tried their best to get it to AJ, right? I got Devontae on my fantasy squad. He got a touchdown early, but from then on, it was, let's get the ball to AJ Brown. Let's let him take over. Let's let him make some noise. Now, talking about making some noise, those boys in Philly up in the fan, it was a woman that was giving the bird to the owner's box, bro. Like,
hey, it is 2022, Kalen. Anybody can give the bird to ananybody. That is how it works.
The truth that's in Philadelphia, man. It was rather surprising. And then the guy that was getting in the owner's box, bro, like, that was not even I've never even seen him before ever. Like, I'm sure that he's got some relation to the owner, but like, that guy was just catching strays. He has no idea what's going on. He's just there smiling like, I got a free ride here with a nice booth, and he's just getting the bird flipped out of him. But, like, what are the Philly fans doing? Why are you saying thank you? Like, we gave you AJ Brown, and like, I was reading, some boards, I'm on Reddit all the time. So I'm reading some Eagles fan boards, and there was some Eagles fans that were even saying, Titans should be saying thank you to us because when he hasn't shown up, he's been invisible. The games that he's shown up, he's had highlight reel type, which is just what he did in Tennessee. Like, there was games that he just completely disappeared and had drops throughout the game, and then there was games that he had 200-yard games and 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns like he did this year, right? Earlier.
But does he have like 8 touchdowns? Like, how is he not showing up? I think the guy's like top 7 in every category except for maybe catches.
You're right, but it's a lot of in condensed. Like, he gets a lot of stats in one game, and then maybe he'll disappear. He'll have like 40 yards. He still gets a couple of catches. He still gets 9 targets. He just doesn't get the receptions, unfortunately. But yeah, I come back to the fans. Like, I just don't get it. Like, we did you a favor. You guys should be happy having AJ Brown. Like, do you think that you would have this offense if you would still have Jalen Reagor, who you wouldn't have traded away if you didn't have AJ Brown in your roster anymore, and
Right.
Devontae Smith? Would he be doing what he's been doing so far? Like, I just don't. And Dallas Goedert's been gone, right? So give some thanks where thanks is due here. Out of the trade, we still got a starting right tackle, we still got a starting corner, and Treylon Burks, who again unfortunately got injured. But I went into that game expecting a loss, and walking into the weekend, I was okay with it if it happened because I really didn't expect the Colts to win, and I didn't
Right.
expect Jacksonville to win, and I certainly, as shitty as he played, I didn't expect Deshaun to go into Houston and lose there either. So it wasn't like it hurt us. We still are in the division. We still have a playoff hunt, right? So in the grand scheme of things, whatever. But
Well,
this is
the narrative out there for the AFC South is right now that Tennessee is the default winner and a default playoff team, right? Like I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm just saying that is 100% the narrative right now.
Oh, I agree. It's funny. There's like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the narrative was that Tennessee didn't have an offense, but they had a defense that could potentially carry them somewhere if they could have a run game in the playoffs, right? And I was just going to say there, who have we missed for 2 straight weeks? 3 weeks ago, we didn't have, and this was the conversation, was Danico Autry, right? And we lost David Long this week, which I still think is a top 5 middle linebacker in this game. I'm not saying there's a biased opinion. I think the guy he's a 3-down back. He's a 4-down backer if needed. But Danico Autry has been somebody that when we have a national game, beside Jeff Simmons, that's who gets praised by the announcers, right? And he wasn't there for 2 straight games. And unfortunately, that really hurt us. If we can get that guy back, then maybe our defense comes back to that level that we saw before. But the offense is absolute garbage. Again, we just run, punt, run, punt. Like screen game is trash. So
the problem is it's not even just like that you're running, it's that you're running so inefficiently, and those big ones that Derrick Henry eventually breaks at the end, they aren't there because, and I personally think it's because they have Tannehill at different play calls with him as the quarterback that they had when Malik was the quarterback. Malik was just another running option, another guy that's going to open it up. Ryan Tannehill is a game managing quarterback, which I have a whole idea on how to build an NFL team, and it is around game managing quarterbacks, and I think that the Steelers have one right now too. But if you start to ask those guys to do more than what they're capable of doing, and your team isn't built around it, I mean, if you look at the Tennessee receivers, outside of us, who can name the other Tennessee receivers maybe after Treylon Burks? Like, obviously, Bobby Trees is there, and then
he's got wood for hands now, it seems.
Yeah, and Westbrook Acuna. But outside of that, I mean, who else is there? I mean, if I were to tell you that Hilliard was a guy that's important in your offense, I think you're throwing up in your mouth and you're ready to move on to the next day.
Well, everybody's got a role. I do believe that, and Hilliard has his own role in this team. But you're right. I mean, it's trash. And now Tannehill, I mean, just talking about receivers, you just said it right there. You can't name anybody, and unfortunately, game managing quarterbacks, which Tannehill at this point in his career is, especially with dealing still with a high ankle sprain, which is going to knock his mobility. It's not going to play well. But we have a left tackle who has given up the most sacks in the league, next to I can't remember what this. It's another guy named, but he's 150 less snap attempts than the other guy, pass blocking attempts. Because we don't pass the ball, right? So, like, this is how bad our left tackle is since Taylor Lewan has gone down. Unfortunately, there's absolutely zero depth. Our GM, unfortunately, didn't build that properly. But, that's what it is. We're hamstrung now with a $40 million quarterback who is not worth $40 million, but we had to stretch it out the way we did.
Right. And you know what, the whole game manager thing, I mean, if you don't have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or, I guess to a lesser extent, Joe Burrow, if you don't have one of those 3 guys, you need a game manager. And, I am going to put Jalen Hurts in the game manager category because he knows exactly when to run. They built running plays around him. I think that any Philly fan actually, they probably wouldn't. That if you need him to drop back 50 times and throw to win a playoff game, he's not going to win. And if you don't have a quarterback that can drop back 50 times to win the game, you have a game manager and you have to game plan accordingly. The 49ers are a great example of it. The Rams are another one of those teams that they don't have a game manager. You know, Matthew Stafford is a guy that is expected to do a lot more. Look at how bad that team is and how bad that team is going to be if all of these guys walk away. You know, last year, Stafford could have walked away with the Super Bowl. Aaron Donald could have walked away. And Sean McVay had a $20 million contract from, I forget who, CBS or Amazon Prime or something, to go sit in the booth. And all three of those guys decided to come back. Realistically, outside of all those guys, who do you think doesn't regret that? But if they had more of an offense like San Francisco, I don't think that they would look so abysmal heading into Sundays now. You know, this weekend or this Thursday, the Rams have Thursday night football against the Raiders. Would you think that like call this even 2 weeks ago? Would you give the Raiders 6 points on the road against the Rams 2 weeks ago?
No, no, no.
Yeah, unbelievable. And you know that's why I think the game manager thing is going to be important. We are going to see a lot more of that.
But
You know,
it comes down to one more time, like the left tackle
yeah,
position. We've talked about in past about offensive lines around the draft time. We're talking about who we're looking at and stuff. Nobody gets really excited talking about the O line. I really do want to start getting some hype there because Whitworth is gone. That if you ask anybody in LA what the biggest problem on offense was, it's their offensive line. And it's like that left tackle is just not holding up anymore. And we're talking about a 40-year-old left tackle that was still top 5 and maybe even top 3 in the league. Like, what is going on that we have, hundreds of college programs and we can't seem to teach or coach, maybe 25 even quality left tackles? How was there still only 6 that are competent in this league and the rest are just turnstiles? It's unbelievable, right?
it's the programs that are getting the most accolades are the teams that aren't running the kind of offense that you actually need the left tackle to stand there for. You know, the RPO offense or the RPO or what is it? PRP now, where you can actually pass or decide to run and then pass again. Like there's a whole yeah. There's like all these different things that are going on. Your left tackle can get 3 yards downfield and kind of get, he's not even in the sight line of the camera anymore. He's down there bullying some safety who, goes to fucking Austin P. How many left tackles are going to come out of even this draft? I looked because I think that the Steelers might actually get a left tackle, not in the first round, but they got given a gift, an absolute gift by the Chicago Bears, who right now hold the second overall pick, and they traded their second round pick for Chase Claypool. So right now we're looking at the 34th pick in a draft for Chase Claypool. I don't know, man. I've watched a couple Bears games since he went there, and like I'm not going to bury the guy, but you're a blocking receiver that can make plays in the end zone. You went to the only offense in the league that doesn't throw jump balls in the end zone because their quarterback's going to run it in. That's an absolute gift. But yeah, back on to left tackles. There just isn't really any coming out. There's a guy from Northwestern that kind of has a Polish last name that's going to be a top 5 pick. Outside of that, I didn't see anything.
Which it's crazy, and what's crazier about it, and I get it that this is I'll call him a generational talent only because he was able to switch sports that he never knew or never played in his life. But we're talking about like the guy down in Philadelphia, right? That is arguably probably now, because of his age and everything, you might say he's probably the best left tackle in the league right now at this point. We'd probably the number 1 pick for most GMs across the board again because of age. But like this is a guy that never played, never watched a sport, had to learn the rules as he came over. His first year was not very good. They talked about it during the Titans game and how even Jason Kelce was like, I looked at that guy 6 games into his first season and thought he's not going to make it. He's not going to be able to do it. But in a year later, and now 2 years later, again as I mentioned, he's probably arguably the best left tackle in the league. How is it possible that you can find a talent like that living in Australia? But you've got hundreds of programs that can't seem to put together 25. That this is their main focus, right?
Yeah.
You can't put together 25 good left tackles for the NFL. I know they need like 32 teams, but like you can't even get an 1/8 of these teams in the league to have a competent left, maybe even right tackle. Like the interior guard program seems to be not that bad across the board. But you talk about the edge pass protectors, they just don't seem to be there in the NFL. It's crazy. There's so few and far between.
Well, what they need to do, and a lot of the tackles that are in college are sliding in to play guard. And I think that's why you're seeing like some pretty big guards coming into action. If you could find a tight end that is not an NFL tight end, because he's going to have the size, and have him put on about a hundo, you know,
100 pounds. Just
well,
eat for
look, they
four
did it with
months.
you remember Alejandro Villanueva? You know,
Yeah.
he was drafted. He was a receiver at Army. Got drafted into Philly. They were trying to make him a D lineman. The Steelers plucked him off that practice squad and put him on their practice squad and said, just put on some weight. We'll make you a left tackle. And the guy played for 8, 9 years in the league, and he made some money. So
So I guess
maybe
the
there's something
answer
to
is
that.
you
I mean,
just
he
got to.
was an Army Ranger, so he's a freak athlete. But
That's what I'm just, the answer there is you just got to make sure you get them from the program like Army or Navy. Those guys don't
right,
know how to say no when you give an order. Just eat and gain 100 pounds in the next 5 months. Yes, sir. Right?
yeah, and well, and he wasn't like a blob. He was just thick. He was 6'8". But I mean, if you could find a receiver at Army that's 6'8" and tell him to put on 200 pounds at that point in time, I think that you're in good shape. Like this could be like the way to world peace.
Are
Let's
they
just
even
stop
talking
sending
about?
guys away to war. Let's just make them left tackles. I'm just telling you. I think that they can all become left tackles.
Yeah, because like all the receivers that they just run the ball all the time, so they're just used to
Yeah.
being run blockers, right? I get it. It makes good sense. Yeah.
Well,
Now,
Kaylin and
you
I are
spoke about
solving world peace,
yeah,
and go ahead.
I was gonna say you mentioned something there earlier about the PRP that's in the college system now, and
Yeah.
now I don't know. Can you confirm this for me? Is the illegal man downfield that you love so much that I have grown to hate as well as you? I never even cared about it until you mentioned that I see it every fucking game now. But is that a little bit different in college? Or do they have more than a yard now? So it's 3 yards for them. Is that how that works there?
Yeah, so they get 3 yards.
Okay.
As well, they can start blocking be like as soon as the snap is done. So a receiver can run right at somebody and start blocking them right away and not have to worry about any kind of like bullshit or like roughing or anything like that.
Okay, so now I agree with most people that giving a 2 or even 3 yard cushion in the NFL, it is just going to be a fucking free for all, and people are going to get hurt if you do that. I don't think that is going to be the adjustment to the rule that needs to be made. However, I know there needs to be some adjustment somewhere. Can you help
Yeah.
me? Can you give me something, Shane, that can help us? We can maybe email the league and say, "Here's our idea. Just pitch it." What can we do?
So so I think that the college rule is right. Um, no matter what, they're never going to revert to the college offense, even though there's already big portions of it in the NFL. But 3 yards is acceptable. Last night there was one. The guy was a yard and a half, but he was running backwards before, like he realized he went, and then he was running backwards, and they still threw the flag on it. I'm trying to remember what game. I think it was in the Colts game, but like the absurdity behind that, and like the self-centered nature of a ref to want to be on TV so badly that like that's the penalty that you decided to single out. I don't understand. Like people have tuned in to not watch you call penalties, but to see cool, interesting offensive plays and big hits. Well, guess what? We've already taken big hits out of the game. So get it, player safety, that makes a lot of sense. Why are we penalizing the teams that have offensive, like, I don't know, creativity, and their linemen are trying to find their way into the next level? And just, I don't know.
So
I,
now
I think it's absurd.
here's I when I had complaints about the 3 yard, because initially I was like 2 yards, 3 yards. Like I don't see what just go to the college rule. Like if that works, it works, right? If they've already been doing it, it's nothing to you don't have to de-learn it by the time you get to the NFL, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then
I
I
wasn't
saw
even looking at our comments. Chad's blowing us up here.
is he? But I had seen somebody had put up a Twitter thread of different videos showing where put that lineman being 2 yards upfield or 3 yards upfield, it blew up a play. Like it made a linebacker cover that lineman, not realizing because he was just out of his side vision that opened up the tight end. I can see that. Now the other one that I saw that was completely it makes sense is player safety in the sense that we see pick plays all the time, right? The rubs, you see that, but that is
Yep.
sometimes like a wide receiver going against a tight end or against another wide receiver. The body opposites just aren't there. Can you imagine if a 330-pound offensive guard happens to step 2 yards up into the running lane and just flat lines that opposing defender that's coming across the field there? You could say have your head on a swivel, right? But at that same token, we've also gotten rid of a lot of crack blocks. There's a lot of you can't cut a lineman can't cut a player in the middle of the open field anymore when he's running outfield on a screen. So they obviously wouldn't allow that for player safety, and that's where I can kind of see where the no man's land that is the line of scrimmage would become
Right.
a no man's land of 3 yards, and that's a lot of leeway to have for player safety. I get that,
But they
but
have a way to police it with the crackback block. I mean, if a player is running across and he's not in that person's lane, regardless of whether you make a full decision to turn back, if you hit him, it's a crackback block. Like that's just like the way that the rule's written. So I think they're still protected. I mean, someone's still going to get laid out, and ultimately someone still might get hurt from it. But they do have like those protections in play. I think it's one of like those archaic rules that the NFL kind of forgot about. And even if we think back to last year and like if we pulled the stats of how many times that penalty was called last year versus this year, I think there's just been an evolution in the offense in the NFL. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's something that they modified. Um, you and I seem to be the only people pissed off about it. I don't really understand. I don't really understand why there's not more of an uproar about this, but
I think it's because maybe they
there
haven't
should be.
pointed it out to them. You just pointed it out to me. I never cared before, and now I see it all the time. If I point it out to people, or you point it out to people, I think that they'll start to care too. We got to catch
Well,
this.
and the I mean the Steelers are running a college style offense for the most part, and that's maybe why I noticed it a little bit more. But we got the Ravens coming up, and we're gonna get back into NFL. But I see that nice bright polar bear behind you, and I figure it's probably not a bad time to give out best bets. And I built the same game parlay just before I came on. I didn't write down the odds, but that's okay. I got Tom Brady over 250 passing. I got Andy Dalton over 200 passing. Taysom Hill to get in the end zone. I think if you could package those three pieces together, you'll be looking in very good shape.
Wow.
Yeah, so head on over to our friends over at Cool. They actually did a pretty cool thing over the weekend. That Commanders and Giants game that tied, the guys actually Huss and one of his buddies put in a parlay for the Steelers, the Commanders, and the Vikings. It was paying out plus 500, but with that draw, it would wipe out the entire thing, right? So the guys at CoolBet, because they're the best in the business, they decided to void that game and still pay everybody the plus 245, and everybody ended up making a little bit of money rather than losing all the money they put into it. So I think it's a pretty cool move on their part. So if you didn't like CoolBet before, there's definitely a reason to like them now.
Yeah.
They want to give you free money, and they great guys, and they have a dope logo. Baltimore Ravens. I feel like they might be in a little bit of trouble here. Last year, if we can turn the clocks back, Lamar Jackson gets hurt on a similar-ish play, misses the final 5 games of the season. The Ravens lose all 5 of those games, fall short of the playoffs. I believe that they're in a similar situation. Tyler Huntley, not awful. You know what? He didn't play awful. There was a lot more injuries in Baltimore last year than there was this year. They found a way to squeeze out that game in Denver, but in all reality, they shouldn't have. They have the Steelers coming up this week.
They just
For
got
some reason,
by facing the Broncos. Like you talk about archaic. That's archaic offense.
yeah, the Steelers are catching 2.5 points at home, mind you, but being the favorites against Baltimore isn't really what I anticipated going into this one. But this is a big game for the Steelers, a big game for the Ravens. What is your expectation of the Ravens now? Do you even have an expectation?
Well, I still think that they'll make the playoffs. And the only reason that I think they'll make the playoffs is because I think that we are seeing an absolutely sputtering team over in New England. Like, I really think they're just going to choke down the stretch here. And I think that at least Baltimore has stacked enough wins that keeps them in as even a wild card type team, right? So,
right, they have 8 wins right now. So, I mean, they are in better shape in that way than they were last year.
Yeah. And I think they're lucky that they were able to get those wins ahead of time before this Lamar Jackson injury. What are the rest of the games? Do we know offhand? I'm just going to take a quick look at what their schedule is.
They got 2 against Pittsburgh for sure. I know that.
2. Oh, so okay. So 2 division games and one right now, which is coming up this weekend. You mentioned, right?
Yeah, and I believe they're going to have to play the Bengals again too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bengals, the Browns, and then the Falcons. So I mean, the Falcons. I think they can probably win that game. That's only 3 weeks from now. I have no idea. Lamar Jackson's limp. I don't care what Harbaugh is telling me about being day to day, and then it was suddenly week to week. Like that limp was pretty, evident
Yeah.
yesterday when he was coming up the stairs. Mind you, they didn't help him up the stairs. I thought that was pretty crazy. This guy's limping on his knee. Nobody's reaching out an arm to take any kind of weight off of that. Like, this is your quarterback up the stairs in cleats, concrete cleats. Doesn't really mix.
This is the hot take that I've been pushing all year long, and I think that Lamar Jackson might have played his last game in Baltimore. Like, it might be done. It's over now.
So even if they make the playoffs, you don't think it'll be there, like they're in the playoffs? So like, I still think that's where, if they make the playoffs, he's got a contract he's still playing for, and we know that Baltimore quarterbacks can get paid off of playoff performances, right?
Yeah, hey. I mean, one of them has done it before, and that guy's still floating around the league. Day to day and then week to week. I get that you don't want to rule the guy out because that's kind of deflating to the team. I can't imagine him playing, and if he can't move around the way that he needs to move around, he's not the guy you want at quarterback anyway. He's not an accurate passer. So if his yeah, hey, well, I mean, anytime you say Lamar Jackson and pass in the same sentence, you want to barf. But the idea that they would rush him back, I don't see it happening. He's not going to rush himself back because I think that no matter what his body of work is for the remainder of this season, his contract dollars do not change. I can just tell you that he's not paying state tax in Maryland. Yeah. That's the only thing I know. Whether he's going to Florida or he's going to a place like San Francisco or Carolina isn't like a bad move for him. Wherever he ends up, I don't think it's Baltimore, and I don't. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem like he wants to be there anymore. Tyler Huntley show. Let's go. Move on. Next topic. Unless you have some more Lamar Jackson hot takes.
No, I mean, I don't think he'd stick around either. Like, when you're a free agent, I mean, of course he gets franchise tag. He might have his way, but this guy's going to push a trade to whatever team he wants, right?
Right.
Like one of those things. Like, this guy's going to have an opportunity to look at an offense and pick and choose where he wants. This isn't like the offense will already be set on the team that he's going to. Most of those players are going to be young and on younger studded contracts, so he'll be the final piece of the puzzle kind of thing, right? But we can definitely leave off of him. But if we're sticking in the category of where a quarterback might land, I mean, there's the Baker Mayfield saga here, right?
Yeah, there sure is.
This is what a fall far from grace this is for a first overall pick. But there's a few teams. I made a joke coming on, and I don't know where you think he lands. Baltimore, maybe one of those. I mean, in division, they know him. Maybe it's either comfortable there. Maybe they would like him to get a little revenge on some teams remaining. But I still think that, obviously San Francisco has a need here. I can totally see a team like the Rams not willing to throw in the season yet and put in a bid to get him in the waiver wire, hoping that solves their season woes. And, I'm not saying that this guy is going to be the savior, but Sean McVay can make, a lot out of nothing, right?
Yeah.
He could bring something to the table. Cooper Kupp, if he has a receiver like Cooper Kupp, he can really maybe make some noise here. And in the division, I mean, anything can happen still.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, why would you want the 49ers to get him? Like the entire 49ers McCaffrey thing was almost shut down because the Rams were willing to just mortgage another 5 years of the future. I don't think that. I think that Sean McVay is just at peace. Like, he's just ready to like circle the toilet here. Move on. The season can't end fast enough. No matter how bad you finish, you're not getting a good draft pick out of it because you've already given them away. Eating the $1.5 million, I think that just about any team would be willing to do that. If you had a capable backup for $1.5 million, I'm just not sure that he's a capable backup. And you bring a guy like him in where Brock Purdy, I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be the answer. So, I mean, all those San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl tickets I'm holding, they're not feeling great at the moment. Like, that was the team that I went and hammered on. But will they claim him? I think if they have the opportunity to claim him, yes, because why wouldn't you want him in the building if you're Kyle Shanahan? But should they claim him? I'm going to say no. The guy has been a proven loser everywhere that he's gone, and he's not a locker room guy. And if you Baker Mayfield walks into I actually saw something really funny on Twitter just before we came on. Think back to the original Mighty Ducks when Adam Banks came into the locker room and Charlie went to shake his hand. And the guy put his arm in front of Charlie and said, "No, don't shake his hand. He's a cake eater." Like that is 100% what's going to happen when they roll into if he rolls into the locker room in San Francisco. You know, I think that they're okay with Brock Purdy. I think that they're okay with him having at least whatever it is, 13 weeks plus training camp plus the mini camps to learn the offense. They cut Nate Scudfeld at the beginning of the year because they wanted to keep this kid around. They already brought Josh Johnson off the Broncos practice squad, which means no matter what, they have to keep Josh Johnson on the roster for 3 weeks, which is an NFL rule I didn't know, but interesting. So they are going to need a third quarterback most likely. Is it Baker? Maybe. Should it be? I don't think so.
Yeah, and also another unique practice squad rule that I learned this year as well is that you can only call a player up so many times in a season before you have to sign him to the roster.
Yeah.
We had to sign Murchison this year to an extension next year, but it was just basically to spread the cap hit because we knew we had to sign him this year. So interesting.
Yeah, well, hey, I think that they're figuring out the practice squad thing. At least that there's half decent players sitting on people's practice squads because of the veteran rule. And like if COVID brought us one thing good for sports, it was that because you're not getting a guy that's never had an NFL snap walking into situations. The Steelers, for example, had to stash Josh Jackson on their practice squad corner from the Packers. He actually went in and played a couple games, and he's part of the reason that they beat the Buccaneers. So, you keep a veteran around and, get them paid next year, hopefully. Yeah. Well, whatever. We're staying in division. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals might be hitting that late stride that they did last year. I'm just not convinced that they're as good maybe because we have a higher expectation. They don't look as good. Last year when they went on their little tear, it was really easy to think like, wow, where did Cincinnati come from? But now a Super Bowl runner-up gives you the expectation that you're supposed to be a winner. But I have a confession. I have a hard time rooting against Joe Burrow. Because he is, yeah, no.
Are you calling him Joe Shiesty now too?
No, I'm not a loser, but that's he's just so good, man, and like it doesn't even look like he's trying that hard. Things come naturally to him. The days of me hating Cincinnati and Andy Dalton and Vontaze Burfict, they're long behind. I don't consider, like we're not in a playoff run against them. We're not racing for the division against them, even though, the Steelers are a couple wins away from being a playoff spot, which is stupid. Yeah, I'm rooting for them. Yesterday, I sat there and I was really trying to convince myself to root for Kansas City. Couldn't do it. I didn't have it in me, and by default, that meant I was okay with Cincinnati winning yesterday, and I will endorse Cincinnati as the AFC North winner. Look at the division right now. I know that we called Tennessee default. We're calling the Buccaneers default. I think that Cincinnati is going to end up with one of those default division wins, but they deserve it more than the other two.
Well, okay. Maybe I can help you on the Bengals talk there. Kansas City's been good for so long. Maybe you're just sick of cheering for them. Maybe you're starting to get that New England type mode, right? You're just done cheering.
Probably.
For them that way. Here's the thing. I know the coach just went to the Super Bowl. I know he's a young coach, but there are some times that I feel like they win in spite of Zach Taylor.
He's the worst coach, yeah.
There are some play calls for an offensive coach that I just go, holy shit, if you did not have Joe Burrow as your quarterback, if you didn't have Ja'Marr Chase as one of your wide receiver one, you wouldn't, or even the wide receiver trio that they have there is ridiculous. And then you've got Hayden Hurst too. So I think that he's somebody when Joe Mixon comes back, this guy is going to try and outsmart himself. You got a running back, Sammy J. P. Ryan, that is just playing, or Samaje, sorry. Playing amazing the last few games in replacement of Joe Mixon. Don't get off the hot hand. I understand Joe's your starter. I understand that he was playing well before. Don't break what's working right now. And I just think that he's going to try too much to get him involved, like Joe Mixon. Uh-huh. And I think that that's what maybe their downfall, unfortunately.
Yeah, if there's a Bengals player that I don't like, it's Joe Mixon.
I love Nick.
amazing.
I think that it won't be the. You just don't get off the hot hand. That's my thing with
I,
running back lately.
I think he's the most overrated running back in the league. But amazingly enough, uh, P. Ryan was actually Mixon's backup in college. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. Both went to Oklahoma. Uh, Joe Mixon decided to do his off-field shenanigans, so it's actually why P. Ryan was kind of thrust into the spotlight and got a few extra carries, and ultimately the rest is history. Interesting that the Bengals have them both. I don't think that they targeted him, but I do think that P. Ryan is good. I think that the offense that they've been running is really good. Higgins is stepping up. It would be really, really good for them to get Tyler Boyd more involved, because it just doesn't seem like he's involved, even to the point where he's not paying attention when he's got those wide open balls in the end zone to just kind of walk in and lets it hit him in the face mask. You got to get these guys involved. The receivers are such a delicate breed.
That's
And
just what
yes,
they do in Cincinnati. They're delicate. That's what they're known
yeah,
for. That's never going to leave Cincinnati, is it?
no, no, no. And I think yesterday was the first time that maybe the Chiefs missed Tyreek Hill. The Valdez Scantling not being able to get 10 out of 10 on those deep passes. He did get 2 out of 4, I think, or 2 out of 5. So that is kind of the difference in some of these plays. A couple bad play calls. Pacheco, I think, is just another draft steal that they found. But
he's just so gimmicky. It's crazy how much they can move him all over the field. He's like Kamara 2.0.
and he's bigger too, and I think that he's the kind of guy that if they ran him 20, 25 times a game, which eventually I think that they will, he's going to be the guy that breaks the long, like the Josh Jacobs type, or yeah. And look at 2 years ago we were burying Jacobs, but maybe he just wasn't healthy. Right now he looks really, really good. He's the only reason the Raiders are winning. And yeah, I'm sure that Kansas City's happy that they don't have to pay a wide receiver $27 million. I'm sure that they're happy with some of those draft picks and those guys that they got, and I'm sure they're going to overall get themselves involved. But with the focus on Kelsey and Pacheco being your next best offensive weapon that you had out there, they got to find something to free themselves up, because at this point, and the entire AFC should be kind of worried about this, with everything that transpired yesterday, the Bills now have the first seed again. And I didn't like going to Buffalo in October. It was so cold. You really don't want to go there in January, and you definitely don't want to be going there on the road in an AFC Championship game in January, because, again, those guys jump through tables for preseason games. I have no idea what they're going to do for if they can actually get themselves back deep into the playoffs.
Flaming tables.
Yeah. Wild animals.
For now, right?
Wild animals.
You mentioned Josh Jacobs. He did say something pretty interesting leading into this weekend, and I want to hear your take on it. But they talked about, if Josh McDaniels had lost the locker room, and he said, there's going to be some noise. There's always going to be noise, or I've heard some noise. But I'll tell you this: he hasn't. You can't lose the team without losing the captains, and he hasn't lost the captains. So,
right.
What is your take on that? Because there's like two messages there, right? And one is there are some people on this roster that don't fucking belong here, right? You are not a teammate of mine. That is really what that kind of said, right? There's some rumblings out there, but then there's two that is some truth to behold. Like, we're on the outside that we've been bashing McDaniels this whole time. Is this blind love from the inside out from Jacobs, looking up to his coach, or is this smart in the long run? Do you think that McDaniels can actually like turn this thing around and kind of get a team under his belt?
Yeah, I think McDaniels is the kind of coach that needs the quarterback to be the leader of the team. And you know what? Chad and I absolutely buried Derek Carr for crying on stage and like whimpering after a game. But
I stuck up for him. I still stand by it. He's been there long enough. I get it. If I saw Mariota cry, I would have done the same thing.
Look, they're undefeated since he did that. So, so there's two schools of thought. Maybe McDaniels is starting to pull things together, but I think that the players that are in the locker room, they kind of like Derek Carr. And when he went out there on national TV, whether he was putting Visine in his eyes before he got up to the stage and it was all fake, or that was heartfelt. I think that the guys really felt like they were letting Derek Carr down. The offensive line's playing better. The defense is playing better. Devontae Adams is a freak. He's going to be open. The guy's a mutant. Um, Josh Jacobs has really been on a tear since then. One of the top running backs in the league. I think he's the top scoring fantasy player in the league right now, outside of a quarterback. Uh, so maybe that whimper and maybe that cry touched the heartstrings of a couple players, really made them feel real. Derek Carr's mascara running in a press conference got the team going. And I got like, whatever. If that's the case, if that's the way it goes, that's the way she goes. You think of T.O. crying in a press conference. You can think of another guy. I can't, his name's escaped me, but those two guys had the opposite effect. Derek Carr crying, at least you know that the players think that he's genuine, and for some reason they have rallied around it. And maybe the Raiders are just going to go on and win the Super Bowl because Derek Carr was man enough to cry at his press conference. Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, I'm going to make sure I say the quote right. So he says, "No, it takes losing your captains to lose the locker room. Obviously, a couple guys say things here and there, but it's like you don't even play that much. So it's like, why do you matter? But then, but when you lose the guys, that's when you lose the locker room. And he definitely hasn't lost the guys yet. So good quote. It's pretty cool that a guy that comes out saying that has back-to-back massive games and certainly has some embrace for his coach on the sideline right after that. So I know that our boy Rick is happy about it. I'm sure Raider Nation is happy about it. I don't know if it's too little, too late in the AFC to do much with when you're at 5-7 this late in the season, but you're right. They could, you mentioned earlier how it was a winning streak for you guys, right? A 5-game winning streak has to start at 2, right?
Right. And well, I agree. And look,
and they're at 3. So
basically heading into the Steelers bye, they needed to come out and go 7-2 in order to keep Mike Tomlin's winning streak alive, his winning season alive. I would have laughed. I thought, you know what, like this isn't the team. But whatever happened on the bye, and they did lose to the Bengals, but they scored 30 points in that game. Whatever happened on the bye, the offense started to click. Kenny Pickett, even though I don't know, he's not like I don't think that he's a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. Those don't come around all the time. But do I think that 3 years from now he could be a top 10 quarterback in the league? Yeah. Do I think that he has to be? No, because they pay their defensive players. They have enough young, skilled talent around him, and he's finally figured out that you don't have to chuck up the ball. George Pickens had his little outburst on the sideline. Receivers are going to be receivers. I really like what happened. No coaches went over there. Cam Hayward went over there, and he kind of just like put his arm around him and was like, figure this thing out. But you talk about the AFC playoffs. Right now, I'm going to give you the names of the 6 teams that are still kind of air quotes in the hunt. You got the Jets, and then you got the Patriots and the Chargers. And then after that, you're looking at the Raiders and the Steelers. And maybe Cleveland if you think Deshaun Watson shakes off some of his rust or whatever. I mean, I think that he was kind of in hot water going into that stadium. There was a couple people in attendance that maybe had him a little like on edge, but
you mean his family in the stands all wearing his new jersey?
No, I think there was about 10 or so tickets that weren't doled out to family members that were maybe on the back of his mind while he was trying to play quarterback there. I'm definitely not saying that the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. There's a chance because of these things. But for me, I look at it like, okay, well, Pickett's taking a step. Najee Harris is finally starting to run like he's supposed to. Pat Freiermuth is starting to break out. If the receivers get healthy, the O-line is starting to play better with the exception of I think we need a new left tackle because he's the most penalized left tackle in the league right now. They can find a left tackle, whether it's free agency or one of those top 3 picks that they got, because they're going to have 3 picks in the top 45 or so. They can find a left tackle there. They're in fine shape. I would put a lot more stock in the Raiders or the Chargers right now out of those 6 teams that I named, because I think that the Raiders have a lot more talent on offense, and I mean breakaway talent. And the Chargers, if it wasn't for Brandon Staley, the Chargers would probably be undefeated right now. That guy's probably the worst coach in the league. outside of Zach Taylor. And, the Justin Herbert injury, that's one thing. I just don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off out there. But overall, the AFC medium, I guess, the AFC at the top, you got, if you're calling the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, that's probably it, right? Like that's the top of the AFC. Maybe I guess the Dolphins. We're gonna not kill them for a loss on the road to San Francisco. Outside of that, the other teams are just going to cannibalize each other. They're going to be all beat up. I do think that the AFC wins the Super Bowl. As much as I've bet on the 49ers, but the AFC playoff picture is going to be pretty interesting down the stretch. And with this new big shift in schedule, I don't know if you've seen this. 2 weeks from now, the NFL just randomly picked 3 games to go on Saturday. Did you know about this?
Yeah, there's a new thing they're doing this year, right?
Well, one of them is the Bills and the Dolphins, and I think that's going to be an amazing primetime game.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the Super Bowl is going to come in the AFC. I think I agree with you on that, and I just think it comes down to. I mean, it's going to go either way, actually. But the reason I think that's just the gauntlet that the AFC teams have to go through against each other.
Right.
It just it's like SEC against SEC. Iron sharpen iron. In the NFC, I feel like a lot of those teams besides Philadelphia, you can kind of walk through almost right now. So yeah, I think AFC is the team that is going to take it down. That matchup, that Bills and Miami matchup, that is something that's going to be really important down at the end of the season because for some reason I still think that something's going to happen with the Bills here where they falter, and I think Miami is just going to be going on a bit of a stretch here. So I think it's not a loss here, but for some reason I can't count on McDaniel. I've been watching more and more sound bites of that guy, and it's like I want to run through a wall for him. He's just so he's funny at the same time, likable.
Yeah. I think that the Bills are actually going to get hot at the right time. The Dolphins are going to stay hot, and both of them are going to be able to just kind of destroy whatever's on the Patriots' mind. The Browns will be a dangerous team if Deshaun Watson can shake off the rust. But I don't know if he has the arm strength to shake off the rust as much as he needs to. It's been a tough couple of years for him. But here's a question as far as the rookie of the year goes, because I was watching a game yesterday and I was like, why is nobody talking about this guy? Which is, why is Christian Watson not the front runner for MVP or for rookie of the year right now?
I don't know. I mean, somebody was mentioning that last week in one of the Reddit pages, talking about he was a Green Bay fan, obviously arguing his
of course
is why is he not named about it. I just think because he got hot late, like it's just. Which is maybe good for him. I mean, that having your name recognized later in the season may be good going down the stretch here. But I think Green Bay as a team isn't good. It's one of those. Can you give? I know they won yesterday, but can you give MVP to a losing team? Like if you have a player that just balls out as a quarterback, but that's because he's on a losing team, so he's always playing from behind and gets the opportunity to ball out. Like, does that how that works? Same thing in this scenario. If they're playing on a bad team and they're always having to play from behind, so they're always going to pass the ball. Can you give it to rookie of the year to a team?
Well, who has it right now in your mind? Like who if the season ended right now, like who's the rookie of the year?
I don't even know. Honestly, I can't even think of. Actually, you know what? I think
like Garrett Wilson, maybe.
I was actually that's exactly where I was just going to go with is Garrett Wilson, and I think it's because he has been consistent when he's given the opportunities. I mean, Zach Wilson, when he wasn't in there, when it was Joe Flacco, he played well when he had the opportunities. Yep. Second, Zach Wilson got in there when he did air it out. He played well. When he stopped airing it out, of course, didn't play well. He didn't get the stats. But with Mike White being back there again, and again, it comes back to that rain game. It wasn't just Mike White having a good game too. Garrett Wilson made some pretty miraculous catches in the rain too, right? So I do think I have to lean on him, and it's because it's consistency, right? And they're a good team, a recognizable team that I would say he is more the reason that they are winning offensively. Like their defense is really good. I love their defense. But if you look at their offense, you would say he's the reason they're winning. When you look at Green Bay, the offense you say is Aaron Rodgers maybe the reason they're winning.
I mean, Christian Watson's the only one that seems to get open, and that's why he's been getting all these touchdowns or whatever. And, he's been piling and stacking touchdowns. I just think that, as the Packers head into their bye week, and if they come out of their bye week, is it unfathomable that the Packers are going to win their final 4 games? I don't think so. I mean, anytime you got Aaron Rodgers, you got a chance. I think you get the guys healthy. Bakhtiari's story is finally written. That's going to be over. I mean, he's not coming back. I think he went in for like an appendectomy or something now. So
Jeez.
whatever the case is, you know what, I think that guy just might be time to hang up the cleats. But use Aaron Jones, use AJ Dillon. You got Watson that can pull a little bit of the coverage over. That's good news for Aaron Rodgers. Now he's finally got a weapon. Um, do I think that they're going to win all 4 games? No, I don't think it's unfathomable. But if Christian Watson has 4 touchdowns in the final 4 games and the Packers make the playoffs, I think he's the rookie of the year. I mean, I it, the only other person like it's going to have a story attached to it. I think that the Jets are going to fall off. I don't think the Jets are making the playoffs. That's my personal opinion. Um, I think that it generally goes to the quarterback, but it would take Kenny Pickett like going on one hell of a run because even though he's 4-4 as a starter, he has 4 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So like he's not the rookie of the year either.
Well,
Pierce in Houston, he just they're not feeding them the ball enough. They don't have the opportunities.
yeah, Kenneth Walker. Right now, he's got an injury. That's
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking this could be the next one, but we don't know how long he's going to be out with an ankle injury, and I mean that's never friendly to a running back anyway.
Right.
But that would be a name that has been hot throughout the season. I guess I totally forgot about there because he plays in Seattle, and even though Seattle somehow wins, I just don't pay attention to them. I don't want to, for some reason. But yeah, like that's a player that unfortunately we'll see how much he's able to play down the stretch here in the season. But you're probably Watson, Wilson, and Walker are the three dubs. WWW
Yeah.
going for the rookie of the year. Chris Olave was a name that I was just reading here as another option, but I still that offense I think is flat over there. I don't like anything about that.
Yeah.
I'm not watching the game. I watch Jets games to watch Garrett Wilson. Like I'm not watching a Saints game to watch Chris Olave. I'm sorry, not happening.
And look, I think that the Jets comment, like the Jets not making the playoffs, I think it's going to come down to inexperienced coaching. The Mike White experience. Look, the guy can obviously play better than Zach Wilson. I don't know what they're going to do with Zach Wilson, but at any point in time where your quarterback needs to throw the ball like 60 times, 63 times in the game, you have lost track of the game. They weren't so far out of it that they needed to start doing that. They just had some banged up running backs. They really, really had their opportunities down there at the end. But if you expect Mike White to throw the ball 60 times for you and for you to win football games, that's just not happening. This week, they're going up to play Buffalo in Buffalo. I think Buffalo is going to seek a little bit of revenge on them after the treatment that they got up at MetLife a few weeks ago. This one could be like a Bills by 40 kind of thing.
Oh,
like a repeat of like what happened to the Colts last night at the hands of Dallas.
I'm interested to see what they do with Zach Wilson too, and the only reason why I'm interested is because that GM down there in New York, he has been somebody who has held his draft picks to the chest, and he only lets them go when we can all agree that he has won the deal for sure. So I don't think that he's going to be willing to, admit fault in trading a young player like Wilson early, unless he's able to squeeze a good amount of draft picks out of another team. So there'll be a good storyline there, I think, because everybody's going to go. It's going to be like the Russell Wilson type trade, right? Like obviously, nobody's going to have first round picks for Zach Wilson in that regard, like multiple, like because of the history that Wilson had. But there's going to be some sort of action there that New York is not going to give that player up easily. He just doesn't make trades. And this past draft, though, he did, and the trades he made, like we were all looking at like shit. He was able to just pick apart this draft. He was able to score so many players in this draft that helped them. So.
Yeah, and look, I mean, making one bad pick on Zach Wilson, everyone drank the Kool-Aid. He seemed like he was going to be a guy. College football is so hard to diagnose. Just before we came on, we'll pivot into college football for a second, and then we'll get back to the Bucks and the Saints. I know we only got a few minutes left here. Lots of huge things going on in college football right now. They just announced the 3 Heisman candidates. One, Drake Mayo, he kind of did it to himself. That's why he didn't get his invitation. But Caleb Williams got an invitation. Stetson Bennett, the 5th, got an invitation. And CJ Stroud. To me, you look at it, the committee really wanted Ohio State in this thing. CJ Stroud wasn't amazing down the stretch, but he's been pretty good all year. I'm going to guess and say that it's either going to be Stroud or Bennett that win, only because Caleb Williams didn't get his team to the promised land there.
Yeah, I think Caleb, unfortunately, losing to Utah there, especially with the fuck Utah fingernail polish he had going on there. That unfortunately is going to take this Heisman away from him. I think it is CJ Stroud is all it is. You're right. They wanted Ohio State in there. And they couldn't get him in there, unfortunately. So the best thing to do is, give him the runner-up prize there and give him the Heisman. Deservedly. I'm not saying that it's a participation trophy by any means. The guy's obviously a great quarterback. Wasn't great down the stretch, but there was a lot of offenses that kind of fell apart down the stretch, right? That weren't exactly that good. CJ Stroud was just above the rest of mediocrity in the college lane, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that there's two other college points that are pretty big right now. They finally have moved up this college football playoff expansion. 2024 is when it's going to start. 12 teams. So what you're looking at is the Power Five conference winners, the top group of six winner, like your top team this year. For example, it's Tulane, and then you're going to have six at-large bids. It's really going to eliminate that falter down the road because I think that this year's college football playoff probably should have a Clemson in it. A healthy Caleb Williams would have been nice, but I don't know if he'd be healthy in time. You look at Tennessee without Hayden Hooker, really not a playoff team, but would have loved to see them in the playoffs with Hayden Hooker. You know, throw you could throw any other. LSU had a few nice wins,
Down the
but
stretch, they did.
yeah, but a bad loss at Texas A&M kind of keeps them out of it. So the right four teams probably got picked. I think that the committee did absolutely everything that they could to make sure that Michigan was going to the finals this year. Because all due respect to TCU and the way that Max Duggan plays, you're in the Big 12. You're in the Big 12 for a reason. The Big 12 means nothing. You're officially the fifth best conference in the Power Five. So I think that Michigan's going to steamroll them as much as that makes me want to vomit. Ohio State, Georgia, that'll be a cool game. Don't be surprised if Ohio State wins and you're looking at an Ohio State Michigan final. That is what the networks want. So don't be surprised at that. Another thing that the networks wanted, Coach Prime has moved on to the Power Five and he is now in Colorado. The recruits are already starting to come in.
Did you hear how the number was?
No.
Over 200 applied to the transfer portal to Colorado in the last 24 hours.
Right. Yeah, not surprised. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson is one of those guys. There's
offensive lineman from Alabama. Did he not go? A starting one, too. Did he not go?
Yeah, and they just pulled the top receiver in the 2025 class, like immediately. Wouldn't surprise me if some of these Jackson State fellas end up that way. Great for college football. Amazing for the Pac-12. Perfect timing with USC and UCLA leaving. Now you can get Colorado back to being a name brand program. I think overall, this is only the best thing for football. And what I said to Chad was, don't be surprised if Colorado gets themselves back on the map in, say, 3 years, and Coach Prime is heading down to Tuscaloosa. Nick Saban's going to retire eventually.
Listen, you're talking to me about projection. So here's my projection, and you're going to make fun because obviously it's a homer type projection. But there has been, and I think they may actually be already on some betting boards. I've seen the number 2 or 3 ranked team for this. But Texas, for him to go land up in Texas, in a few years after he builds his program in Colorado, that there's the NIL money there, and then the money for him coming from Texas. But Alabama, you're right. Saban does have to retire at some point. For some reason, I do think that the heir apparent down there, as ugly as this sounds, is going to be Bobby O'Brien, though.
Okay, well, I mean that is something that could happen. I know that Saban and Prime kind of have like their own commercials together a lot. I think that they have like an unspoken friendship that's not super put into the media, but
nonetheless, like, you know what? Like, this is like, you touch the point one more time though. Like, this is a guy who went into coaching at HBCU schools. He put them on the map. These are schools that are not going to disappear tomorrow just because he left. There's still schools that are going to be known. Jackson State isn't going to disappear overnight. Some talent is certainly going to be staying there. It's going to be interesting to see who does in Colorado in that Pac-12 conference where you've only got a couple of teams to really compete against. As you mentioned, some are even leaving. So the recruitment portal is just going to be yours, more or less. You're going to own the West, really, besides Oregon, who are you competing against, right? And Colorado was a fun team in past to cheer for. Like, they were always kind of like this underdog. So it's just another underdog program for him to kind of flip on its heels, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool for college football. I think it's going to make sense. He's going to have perfect timing for the college football playoff. We got about a minute left. Monday Night Football, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. The undefeated. Well, I guess Brady lost to the Browns, so he's not undefeated after his divorce anymore. But this will be his first game against New Orleans after his divorce. Is this his chance to kind of like get that monkey off his back? I know the Saints have kind of had his number here a little bit.
Well, they have, but the last game, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure the last game they played, he was actually able to pick on Marshawn Lattimore a little bit, or Mike Evans was able to get open against Marshawn, who has been the kryptonite. So interested to see if Marshawn Lattimore can bring that game back. But I don't know, it's still Brady, man. It's down the stretch. This guy's just got to win a couple of games to seal the division, seal the playoff win, and coast the rest of the season into the playoffs because they're not playing for home field advantage anymore.
No, home field advantage is long gone. I think that at this point they're lining up to play probably the Cowboys. You know, you can pretty much book that right now. The Cowboys and the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs. I think that'll be a nice hot ticket, and anybody that's a season ticket holder of the Bucks should definitely get tickets and move those on the black market because that'll be the hot seller. So that is a good way to end off. We'll go enjoy some Monday Night Football. Make sure you're checking out all the socials. Chad will be back with a nice tan or a sunburn when he gets back from Costa Rica. We'll check him out. You can check out the boys down at the 100 Kellogg's this Thursday and Friday. Going to be stepping in for the Hot Sauce Coast, so make sure you check that out. And we will see you